Vulnerability is an essential element for brands wanting to build community and connect with their customers. But how can you be vulnerable without a personal brand and without sharing some very personal business details? Is there even a way? The answer is yes, there is. We're going to be talking about that today. This is Street Cred, the show focused on helping clothing brands turn their audience into a community. I'm Elijah Delporte, and today we are speaking about vulnerability. Now, how does vulnerability fit into this big realm of community, of building community, right? So I think it's good to put it into context and to understand where it fits into the big picture. Well, very simply, it's that people, I mentioned this before, people can't connect with a company. They can, however, with a personality. Very simple. And so if you want, like when we're speaking about community, what we're talking about is customers having a deeper connection with you than simply just a buying relationship. It goes beyond a professional relationship. The assumption is that if they are in your community, they resonate deeply with you and what you're doing. And so in this way, if you want to build a deeper connection with your audience, you need to show some kind of vulnerability. Now, where people get caught up on this is that they assume that they have to build a personal brand, or they have to share their deepest, darkest business secrets. And they're like, I don't want to do that, because sometimes you don't want to do that. Sometimes you don't want to share the spreadsheet for your business. Sometimes you don't want to share the fact that you had to refund a customer. Or sometimes you don't want to share the fact that your clothing drop didn't go to plan and you had to. That is an option, and so I do want to speak about it, but I want you to know that the last point that I'm going to be sharing on vulnerability, because there's three, is all about an alternative way that you might not have heard of before in terms of how you can be vulnerable as a company that doesn't require you to create a personal brand or share your deepest, darkest secrets. But before we get to that, let's talk about these first 2 points in case you do want to do that. I believe it works really well. You know, something I've started recently is these daily video diaries. And when I say recently, I mean literally, I filmed one today, the first one today, as of recording this podcast, and it might not have released by the time you're listening to this podcast. But the reason I'm doing that is to share some of my successes and failures, what I'm struggling with. And I think that way, in creating a culture of honesty, because that is that's a very important value to me. It's integral to me. In creating that culture, that as an effect, my audience would be able to trust me because I tell them things that other professionals don't tell them, like how much money I'm making, or how my client relationships are going and what I'm doing to improve them, and maybe what's not going so well, some of my faults of my own human nature. And so this is one way to do it, and I do that through this personal brand. I mean, you're watching the Elijah Delporte YouTube channel right now. This is my personal brand. So that's one way. And there's some great example of brands that have done this. For example, Nude Project, in their brand story, they create this video where Bruno Casanovas, who is the co-founder of Nude Project, he shares some stories in the first few years of their company of things really not going to plan. It's the fact that they had 10,000 units in a factory printed incorrectly, and they had to fly out to China and go through all the units and cut and sew manually every single one, and it took them 4 days. And that's just so they could get their drop out on time and it to be the standard and quality that they want it to be. Now, that's an example of a company showing vulnerability and therefore being more than a company, becoming a community and growing an audience that resonates with them. Because the effect of being vulnerable in that way is that you share with people some parts of you that could be criticized. And so in return, your audience feels that they can share with you parts of them that are at risk, that put them at risk, that put them in the way of harm or potential harm. So it's kind of, if you want your customers to do that for you, then you have to do it for them first. And what am I speaking about? Well, I'm speaking about the ways in which they engage with you. Engagement in and of itself is a risk for a customer to do that, because think about it, even liking a post on Instagram, that's a risk, because their friends and family are going to see that. So that's part of their vulnerability, is even engaging with your posts. Heck, let alone sharing some of the parts of them that make them them, or some of the reasons that they're a part of your brand, you're part of your community, engaging this way with other audience members. That's going to require vulnerability, and you need to set the example by being that person first. So that's exactly what Nude Project's doing. However, as mentioned, you don't need to build a personal brand like I am if you don't want to. You can, you don't have to. You don't need to share your deepest, darkest secrets, and the fact that Bruno Casanovas has dealt with more anxiety than ever in the past year. That's what he said in his brand video for Nude Project. You don't have to share that. So you don't have to share your struggles and your business thing. So then this brings me on to the third point, and this is what I want to spend most of the time speaking about. And it's an underrated way that you can show vulnerability as a company to become more like a community. And that's in the way that you take a stance. How do you, as a clothing brand, take a stance on controversial ideas? That's vulnerable. Seriously. The easy thing to do is be a fence sitter, to sit in the middle, to not be vocal about anything. It's vulnerable, on the other hand, to say, I believe in this, or I value this, or I value this thing. Because in saying that you believe in something, on the contrary, you're also saying, it also makes the assumption that there is something else that you don't believe in and that you don't stand for. You're going to have to ruffle some feathers. There's going to be some people that might unfollow you. There's going to be some people that are not going to be happy with you. However, in doing so and putting yourself in harm's way, you also set yourself up for a great success. And the great success is that you're going to have people that love you, because if you have people that hate you, you'll have people that love you. That's always the case, whatever the controversial topic or idea is. And it doesn't have to be controversial. All I'm simply saying is pick a side. Don't be a fence sitter. Don't be in the middle. Don't be agreeable. Don't be a yes person. Don't just nod your head at everything. Pick a side. Pick a side. And the amazing part about picking a side is that you also get to outwork whatever you believe is your positive difference in the world. Because sometimes your positive difference might not agree with culture. In fact, usually it doesn't. Because for the most part, I think culture has some good things going for it. But for the most part, culture sucks. Culture is pretty negative. It's, where we push these ideas of virality. It has overconsumption, consumerism. There's bad parts to capitalism. There's good parts too, but there's bad parts to capitalism. I disagree with a lot of culture, like a lot of the culture around relationships and around love and around, I believe there's rules around these things. And I think that there's people that have positive brand messages that disagree with culture, that are going to cause them to ruffle some feathers, but in the process, they're going to build brands that people are so very committed to and so very loyal to. So let me give a couple of examples of brands that are vulnerable in the way that they disagree with culture and take a stance and a vocal about a social issue or a cultural topic. And the first one, and by the way, please come at these with an open mind. You're not going to agree with every single example and their stance that they take. That's okay. Please come with an open mind. Like, heck, even I don't agree with all of these examples. But my point is, with these, is more so the strategies behind it and how you can do the same for whatever your positive message is that you so believe in and you want to see outworked in your vision in the world. Okay, the first one is Nike and Colin Kaepernick. So this story comes from 2020, I believe, during the peak of the Black Lives Matter movement. And so Colin Kaepernick is an African-American football player, right? In American football. And during this time, they do the national anthem on live television at the football games. Colin Kaepernick decides not to represent the national anthem, and instead, what he does, his body language and not singing the anthem, and is seen as disrespectful to the American nation in the eyes of many supporters of the team. And same as with the NFL, the National Football League. And so what happens is that Colin Kaepernick is not a player anymore. And much the reason because of the stance he took during the Black Lives Matter. And why was he doing this? Well, there's a lot of police brutality going on this time, and he believed that it was contradictory to his values to stand for a national anthem that supports police brutality. So that's why he didn't. So he lost his job. He lost his position on the team. And a lot of people were very mad about the situation. It was very heated. There was people taking sides. There was no one really sitting on the fence. You either loved it or you hate it. And so what happens is Nike comes along, and they, with their, I believe it's their 50-year Just Do It campaign. What better person to have as the face of this campaign than Colin Kaepernick? Amazing. What a great idea. So he's the face, and this is in the midst and after he's already, the player's already taken his stance, and he's out of the team, and all of this billboard in the middle of New York City in Times Square is there with his face on it. And it has this catchphrase. It says, "Stand for something, even if it means sacrificing everything." So what do you have here? A Nike brand that's about, just do it. Stand for something, right? A big part of what they're doing is, they stand for something. I mean, they're for the winners, not for the losers, right? And so they take a stance on a social issue. So this is on brand to them. They're about standing for something, even if it means sacrificing everything. And so I think this is a bit like two birds in one stone with this example, because not only is this a great example of a brand being vulnerable in taking a side on a social issue, but also the brand message itself of standing for something, even if it means sacrificing everything. Amazing. Okay, what's the result of this? There were two responses to this Nike campaign. One was that people went to Twitter burning Nike shoes. Legitimately. They were burning Nike shoes. They hated the company. Probably they never bought from the brand ever again. So they lost some serious customers that day. Okay, that's a great reason not to do this. What was the other response? Nike's sales increased dramatically. And let me get the stats up. Because it was dramatic. The sales increase. Kaepernick sales increase. Nike sales increase. Nike sales, so this is from NBCnews.com. I don't know how reliable this is. This is the first link that came up. What do they say? Don't follow the first link. Whatever. Here's what they say. Nike sales jumped by 31% after debuting quarterback turned activist Colin Kaepernick as a new company spokesman. And market observers say the president's public display of anger may have backfired by drawing more attention to Nike. Man, increased by 31%. So yeah, sure, they had some people burning shoes. Maybe they'll have some customers that never buy from them again. But there's some other customers that were converted to Nike's loyal community that day that won't buy from any other brand ever again. Are you going to take a risk? Yes, you are. Absolutely. Is it going to pay off? Probably yes. So stand for something even if it means sacrificing everything. And more than likely, you'll make more sales than you would otherwise by building a loyal community in the process. Let me give you one more example, and it's more close to the home, to the streetwear community. We're talking about Tricot. Tricot, of course, the brand that's come up in the last few years. So during it's unfortunate. Everyone's kind of forgotten about Israel and Palestine and what's going on there at the moment as well. But I say everyone, that's not true. Not everyone. Still a very heated topic. There's people that are taking sides. They're on Israel's side. They're on Palestine's side. Now, I don't want to again, this is not a political conversation. This is a strategic conversation we're having. What has Tricot done? They took a stance earlier this year in creating a release for charity. It was a charity event supporting the victims of this terrible war. And they had a Palestine-themed jersey. a Palestine-themed jersey. So, okay, there you go. They're taking the side. What side are they taking? They're taking Palestine's side. They said they're not afraid, and this is in one of their videos that Trico released, and they said they're not afraid to ruffle. They know they were going to ruffle some feathers. They know they're going to lose some followers because of this, and they don't care. This is literally, and I quote, "We're going to ruffle some feathers, and I don't care." They say this in the video, okay? And so what do? They release hundreds of shirts for Palestine. They're Palestine themed. I think they're around the Palestine football team. No, that's wrong. I think that's wrong. I'm not going to speak about something I don't even know about. So forget I even said anything like that. And all of the money, all the profits from that release were going to go towards charity that is supporting Palestinians in this horrible war. And there you go. There you go. There's nothing mediocre about it. There is nothing fence-sitting about it. And let's, again, like, it's not just about choosing a random social issue and saying, okay, let me pick a side on that. It's about how it relates to your brand message as well. Because if you suddenly start standing for all sorts of things and associate your brand with lots of things, you're going to confuse people and your brand will be weak. Your brand will be weak. And that's actually, you know what, this is part of my problem, is that I have a weak brand at the moment. Some people I've asked in the past few weeks, and I say, what's my idea that I speak about? And they'll go, I don't know. And so I'm in a process of becoming really clear about what my brand message is all about, with the brand that I'm creating, and it's all about community building. That's why that's all I talk about. Because it hasn't been all I talk about in the past. It is now. Because I'm sure this is what I'm about. So in saying that, it takes some time to get to the point where you're really clear about what your brand message is, your brand identity is. But once you find it, make sure that's the only thing you talk about. So how does this Israel and Palestine issue link to Trico? They're a brand that's for the game changers. They're for the leaders. And they're so explicit about that through their content. So their idea in the head is that, well, what's a social issue where we can actually change the game, like quote unquote, change the game, right? We could, as in make change in the world. Well, heck, there's a war, and Trico's got the ability to make lots of money. Let's contribute to that. We're not making lots of money just to make lots of money. Let's actually do some good in the world and contribute to that. So look, it doesn't, on a political issue anyway. I mean, I said there's not a political conversation, but I don't think it matters which side you're on. I think nonetheless, no matter which side you're on, donating to a charity and helping people that are victims of a war is a good thing. That is a good thing, objectively speaking. And so they're doing a good thing with their money. And so in the process, they're also taking a side. They probably lose some fans. They probably lose some followers. But in the process, and here's what we're getting to, they build a stronger community than ever because they've decided to take a risk. They've made their brand vulnerable, as in they've put themselves in harm's way, right? They put themselves in cancel culture's way. That's what they're doing. And so don't be afraid from taking a stance on an issue. So let's recap all the things. What are the 3 ways I believe you can be vulnerable? You can do it through a personal brand. You can do it as a company by sharing your business struggles and successes along the way. Or, and this is my favorite way, is taking a stance on an issue. Don't be a fence sitter. Take a stance. And so think about, what do you stand for as a brand? Are you like Nike, they are absolutely against anyone wearing their brand if you're a loser. This is not the brand for the losers. We're for the winners. And that's why they have these campaigns, winning isn't comfortable, and things like this, right? They're taking a stance on who they are for. Or you might be the other side. Maybe you're a sporting brand and you're for just having fun. And that's your stance you're taking on the issue. It's like, it's not just about winning. It's about, what's life about? It's about having fun. It's about relaxing. It's about coming together with friends. Take a stance. Take a stance and apply it to your specific brand identity, whatever the controversial conversation is within that. Okay, that's all from me. Thanks very much for watching or listening to this episode of the Street Cred podcast. If this was helpful, please press subscribe on whatever platform you're consuming this on. I post more like this, and I want to put it out there. If you are a clothing brand that has something interesting to add to this conversation about community building, then I want to put the invite out there to put an application in. Here's how you can do it. Send me an email, lige@elijahdelporte.com, LIJ@elijahdelporte.com, just as my name reads. And there, I want you to tell me that you want to come into the podcast and what you would come and speak about. What's our topic of conversation, right? And think about something especially that might be valuable for other listeners that are clothing brand owners. And so I'm taking applications. I want to have more guests on this show, so please feel free to send me an email and put in your application. And who knows, you might be on the next podcast. And if this was valuable, you can trust that I make other valuable content. I've got a community I'm building of my own of brand owners who you can network with. There's a free streetwear marketing course on the inside. You can join for free today, right now. There's a link in the description. All it asks for you is for your email and 2 other questions about your clothing brand. You know, what's it called and what stage you're at. That's it. And you can fill out this form in 5 minutes, and then you're instantly in. That's all you need to do to get in. And I don't misuse your information. There's no email retargeting, spam, or promotions. So please join me on the community. It's 100% free. There's no reason not to. Thanks very much for watching this episode of Street Cred, and I'll see you next week for another.